Hey, good morning, Jacques. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm talking to Garth Brooks.
Entering his second year as the LSU head football coach.
It was the only way I could get a foot in the door.
Joined by the icon, Kim Mulkey. Hey, Coach, great to see you.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another edition of Jacques Talk. John Brady was LSU's head basketball coach for over a decade. Nice enough to join us right now. And Coach, good to see you. Thanks for coming down Channel 9.
Good to be here, Jacques. Always.
Well, you had a good time this past weekend. It's already been 25 years. I don't know if that's scary or what, since the Sweet 16 team led by Stromile Swift, Jabari Smith.
Time flies, baby. Let me tell you. I hate even saying 25 years. And Stromile and I did a little press conference Friday about 11:30 to kind of open up the weekend. And they asked Stromile that question, can you believe it's been 25 years? And Stromile says, wow, 25 years sure makes me feel old. I tapped him on the shoulder. I said, if you feel old, I must be ancient.
Well, we were talking before you came on the air. You hit the big 7-0.
You have to publicize it? I mean,
well,
I know I don't look 70.
Yeah, absolutely not. Well, I'm less than 2 years away from 50, so that everything.
I think I remember that. It's a while back, 50.
That was.
It's hard to recollect.
When you went to the Final Four, that's going to be. Can you believe it? That's going to be 20 years next year. So that was about that pocket, right? You were 48, 49, 50 around that time?
Yeah, right in there. Yeah. That's your prime. You're hitting your prime.
I hope so. That team, and this is John Brady's bio off of LSUsports.net. It's funny, I read this first line. When John Brady first put a team on the floor of the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, his Tiger squad was undermanned, undersized, and underdogs.
Well, this is a true story. And Joe Dean changed my life hiring me at LSU. I've always, and I'll always be grateful to the Dean family and what he did for me. He hired me when probably he shouldn't have. But Joe Dean called me in about 2 weeks before the first game, and we were on probation. Coming off 4 straight losing seasons, on probation. They were taking 3 scholarships away from us for 3 years in a row, and it was my first year. And Joe Dean called me and he says, "John," he says, "look," he says, "I know your team's not any good. I know it. The fans know it. Just do me a favor." I said, "What's that, Mr. Dean?" "Look good losing." and we tried our best to look as good as we could.
There were a few
some games.
There were a few 55-51 losses in there, right?
Perfect. Yeah, it's one of those teams that if you could just hold it long enough without turning it over, and the shot clock could go off, and you just drop the ball and they have to inbound it. That was a good possession for that particular team.
Will Wade had a term, I loved it. He called those games tractor pulls. He
didn't like those kind. I thought that sometimes they were beautiful games to be involved in.
Well, when your first roster is, and I printed your first roster to remember some names gone by. And no offense to these guys, because without these guys, you don't have your first team at LSU, right?
I wouldn't be here. Yeah, it hadn't been kind of like that.
Somebody had to fill out the roster, but you're not trying to run and gun with Reggie Tucker, DeJuan Collins, Brandon Landry, Leroy Womack. That's Tiger Womack, right?
Yeah.
Lewis Earl, Chico Potts, what a name. Willie Anderson, Cedric Carter, Rogers Washington from Hanson. Louisiana.
Rogers was a good player, though. He was a good player.
Franklin, Louisiana, Hanson High School. But you had obviously no transfer portal back then.
No.
I mean, you could not do an overnight with this situation. You're taking JUCO guys.
Yeah.
Guys maybe from Louisiana who love LSU in their heart and want to do something. So,
well, we got the job. I don't know if it was late April or May. And signing date wasn't too far off, and we had to just take some guys and try to put a team on the floor the next year, and we were about to go on probation for 3 years, my first 3 years, so we were fighting that as well, and then when they told us what was going to happen, they took 9 scholarships away from us for the next 3 years. 3 scholarships a year for the next 3 years for 9, and we had to fight through that too, and so. But that team really, that team really played pretty well for what it was made up of, and our whole idea was we knew we couldn't run the Kentucky Derby without any thoroughbreds, so what we wanted to do was slow the game down and take quality shots, work the shot clock late, build the team on defending well and rebounding, taking care of the ball, and it was a half-court game. Anytime we got up and down, the score gets over at 70, we were in real trouble. So our team knew that, accepted that, and that's how we played some pretty good teams pretty well that year. We got our tails handed to us a couple of times, but overall that team really played with a great deal of effort, and I was kind of proud of what they were able to do.
Absolutely. Well, the two things you always harped upon: defense and rebounding. And as the game has moved through decades, some things never change. And if you defend and you rebound, you've got a shot.
Well, that's effort, and every player can control the effort they give. Now, it's the coach's job to make them play at maximum effort, and however you structure the practices to get maximum effort will show up hopefully in the game. But I think defending and rebounding is something you can't control. You hear coaches say, well, we could control what we can't control. Well, you can control effort, and that shows up in the rebounding and defending stat. And if we could do that, limit teams to one shot, not get killed on the offensive glass, and take care of the ball, we have a chance to, what I always used to say is, keep the game workable. And for the most part, that team was able to do that, and they did a nice job.
Well, if you look at your Final Four team and all the great players on that team, at the time, if you would have said that Garrett Temple is the guy that's going to have the longest NBA career, maybe some people wouldn't have believed that. But his game was based on defense, right? Length, defense.
Yeah.
He could score here and there, but his defense is what has carried him all these years.
Yeah, and the character of him, too, and competitive nature, and accepting his role and playing his role and fulfilling his role. Ego wasn't involved with Garrett. He just wanted to win. He knew his limitations, and sometimes I think players today don't realize what their limitations are. And when you do realize your limitations, there's strength in that as a player. Garrett didn't try to do things he couldn't do, and it's led to a 14, 15-year NBA career. I think at that level where he is, he's great in the locker room. He's a great team player. He accepted that. And the caveat to all that is he got paid for it as well.
Well, and he's been part of the Players Association and decisions, and they look to him as an intelligent guy who has a good understanding of what's going on out there.
Well, he gets it, and he's been raised right.
Yes.
And then that carried over into his career and made him kind of the man he is today, and certainly the player he is. And his claim to fame here is when he shut down Jay Redick in the NCAA tournament. We were able to beat number 1 Duke and continue the road to the Final Four that year.
Coach Redick of the Lakers now.
I think he was a better player than Coach, just my humble opinion.
That's crazy how you have no experience in some regard and go straight to the top of getting one of the biggest positions in the sport.
I think he coached his sons in pee-wee ball or something.
Oh, gotcha.
You skip that qualification.
Well, kind of like Sean Payton, but he did it the other way around. I think when he was on Bountygate, he was coaching flag football and pee-wee football or whatever. But
Sean Payton and JJ in the same sentence doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm up here with Sean. I don't know about JJ.
There you go. I love it. That'd be like that conversation I had with you that one time, and you were talking about the Eagles, and I said at the time the Foo Fighters were big. You're the Foo Fighters. Foo Fighters and the Eagles? No way.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a 20-year younger conversation, I suppose. Yeah.
That's the gap.
Yeah.
But so those first 2 years, I think the first team goes 9-18, 2-14 in the league. The second year, you win a few more games, and I think you double your SEC total. You win 4 in the SEC. The third year, like you said, you're dealing with all this NCAA is just hammered LSU. And that has to do with the fact that Dale Brown was pretty outspoken against them and, called them Gestapo bastards and all the other things. And so I guess on one hand, you got the job because a lot of people didn't want the job.
They saw what may happen. They were hearing rumors of what may happen, yeah.
Right. Then on the other hand, you get the job, and now you've got a shot to earn your own legacy. And by your third year, you've got a team that's one of the best in LSU history.
Well, we fought through it. I hired Donnie Tyndall, who went on to be the head coach at Tennessee. I hired two of my best friends ever in the world, Butch Pierre and Kermit Davis. And I knew if we were going to tackle this thing, it wasn't going to be easy. And sometimes it would just be us in the room and no one else, because no one else really knew who John Brady was. So I hired two guys, and then we brought in Donnie, and that was a good staff. We all were on the same page about how we wanted to do it, and then you got to get some players. And I've always said there's three things you need to recruit well, you need to schedule smart, then you need to coach like crazy, and in that order. And I don't think if you don't recruit well, I don't care how good a coach you are, it's not going to show up in the game. So those three things have to work together. Recruiting well, scheduling smart, don't overschedule on the team you have coming back, make it comparable to them where they can improve as they go along, and then the coaching will kick in. And you get enough good players and you get some good coaching, you can have an excellent team, and that's what that 2000 team was able to do.
Well, Stromile Swift is the key piece there.
Absolutely.
You watch games, and there's sometimes one guy that just elevates above the other 9 on the floor, and you point to him and say, okay, he's special. So how did you get Stromile to LSU?
Well, Butch Pierre did most of the work there, and I just kind of filled in the blanks. But we started following Stromile when we got here. And if Stromile was in the press conference, he said he was going to Georgetown. That's where he wanted to go. He wanted to go play for John Thompson. And everybody came to Shreveport to go in his home. There was, Nolan Richardson, all these famous big-name coaches. And here I showed up, and nobody had ever heard of me. And I remember when we went in Stromile's home, his mother had to go wake him up to come to the interview, to talk about LSU in his house. And he came in stretching, I looked at Butch. I said, he's really excited about our visit. And so, but we talked through it, and his mother had cooked for us. We sat down and ate, and then Stromile visited Georgetown, and something happened up there that he was uncomfortable with.
Too cold?
Well, I don't know. They kind of pressed him and tried to pressure him a little bit, and he got a little uncomfortable. So when he came here, he was telling the story. That's when we beat Florida, and it was #1 in the country in football.
Yeah.
And Stromile said that the excitement of that crowd there, he said, I don't know what came over me, but I ran on the field, and he was hanging on the goalpost when they tore it down. And he said after that, he went out with Booger McFarland and Kevin Falk and some of those guys. And he said after that, I knew I wanted to come to LSU and help this basketball program be the best it could be, and start other Louisiana guys coming here. And if they all came here together, you had a chance to have a special team. And that's what he did. He changed the whole trajectory of the program, coming off the probation. And Jock, his first year, we only had 9 scholarships. We were still on probation. Now, we were allowed to go to the tournament and everything, but we were still restricted. We only had 6 official visits as opposed to 12. We only had 9 scholarship players. And that team was so good that people forgot about that we were even battling that sort of thing, on the inside. So, and had a good his support players were great. Ronald Dupree was awesome. He's from Biloxi, and Jabari Smith was outstanding. Lamont Rowland was the best on-ball defender, in my opinion, in the league. Torres Bright was a freshman, started every game. His time here, except for one when I couldn't find him one night in New Orleans. We were supposed to play, and he missed curfew a little bit, so I didn't start him for a game. And they fit together. And if you were at that reunion, those guys had strong personalities, but they were able to blend them all together to have a really strong team. And that was a special group. And I agree with you. That was one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the history of LSU basketball, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and you got to win a game to get people's attention, I know sometimes in the non-conference you play teams that you're expected to beat. But early in the year, you had a game against Oklahoma State, and they were in the top 15 or something like that. Mm-hmm. The New Orleans Arena had just been built, and you got a good crowd of like 13,000, 14,000 people that showed up. And they're like, okay, let's see if this team is for real or not.
Well, we just won a tournament in Hawaii. It wasn't the Maui Classic, but it's one of those offshoot tournaments at the University of Hawaii. We won that tournament, and we came home, and we beat Oklahoma State. They were 12-13. We had just popped into the top 25, I believe, and we were able to beat them in New Orleans in front of a great crowd. But then we came into SEC play, and I don't know if people remember, we started 1-3, and then we got to 4-4. Then we won 10 straight.
Yeah.
And at that stretch of 10 straight, Kermit Davis says we were the best team in the country because we went to Alabama and put the worst beating they've ever had in the history of Coleman Coliseum. We beat Ole Miss by 30. I mean, we were on a roll there and playing really well. So that team found its mojo at the right time, and then we were able to win the league. And just ran into a buzzsaw in Wisconsin in the Sweet 16, and that fella up there kind of outcoached us a little bit.
It was a frustrating game to watch.
Yeah,
I mean, you just guys couldn't score.
Yeah, we couldn't score.
Defense was smothering that night.
Yeah, they had a good plan, and we didn't match it, and that's why you lose.
Well, the roster, too. So Jabari Smith, he comes from Philadelphia, right?
He's from Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, that's his son that played for Auburn. That was
Right.
a number 2 pick or 3 pick in NBA draft 2 years ago.
Got you. Yeah. Kyle Temple, CT3.
Yeah.
Very good player in LSU, a great three-point shooter. He was young at that point.
Yeah, freshman or sophomore, one of the two.
You talked about Ronald Dupree, certainly one of the biggest elevators I've seen in a guy that could feel like he was dropped from the ceiling.
Yeah, for 6'6", 6'7", he was extremely athletic. He's from Biloxi. Kermit did a nice job recruiting him, and I just tagged along and didn't screw it up.
It hasn't changed. Like, you run into Ronald Dupree, and he's still the same sweet, gracious guy he's always been, you know.
With the Milwaukee Bucks in charge of their scouting.
Awesome.
Yeah, doing really well.
You going through that schedule, and that's in the time of Billy Donovan in Florida, right?
Right.
Tennessee, you lost to as well at home, but they were big, and then you lost 3 in a row at Vanderbilt, and then you got rolling. The Arizona game on a Saturday is one of the biggest home wins, I think, or home atmospheres that LSU's ever had. And not only did you win, it was not a buzzer beater. You beat them by almost 30 points.
Well, we had them 38-21 at the half, and if you go back to that Arizona roster, they probably had 6 pros on that team, and we really guarded them well. Stromile and Jabari both had really good games that day, and I think that's still the worst loss in Lute Olson, the Hall of Fame Lute Olson coaching career, was when we popped them here in Baton Rouge. You
beat Kentucky at home on a Sunday. Pitino was he coaching? Or
I think, or Tubby, maybe Tubby.
Tubby, maybe, yeah. They were highly ranked, and of course it's Kentucky. So anytime LSU beats Kentucky, that was another huge win. You talked about the Ole Miss game, 97-53. You beat them on the road, wiped them out, and then Southeast Missouri State. That was the opening round.
What was the Alabama score?
The Alabama score. Let's see here
in Tuscaloosa.
93-60 on February the 5th. You beat them by 33.
How about that?
Yeah.
And you go to Alabama, and LSU's had trouble winning in Alabama, and you go over there and beat them by that number. That means your team's hitting on all cylinders. Then you beat Arizona like that. We had a stretch there where we were really, really good.
Well, I was joking with somebody the other day. I'm like, LSU could have, Chris Jackson, Shaq, Stromile, and go to Alabama and lose, because they've gone over there a lot in the last 20 years and haven't won many times.
Right.
I think you beat them in 2005 or something, and then after that, it might have been till like the Ben Simmons team beat them on the road. Yeah, there's a lot of.
That's a tough place to play, but anywhere in the league now is rough, and even then, going on the road was difficult. And if you're able to, still it holds true today. If you're able to defend the home court and still, if you're on the road, you got a chance to maybe play for a championship, and that's kind of been the same all throughout the league in the time I've been around it.
Southeast Missouri State, the first round of the NCAA tournament. That was Bashara hits the shot, right, to win?
And he traveled. Actually, they didn't call it. He did a 3-pointer, I think it was, and he traveled, kind of shuffled his feet, and they didn't call it, and he hit it, and that won the game. And we struggled that first round with Southeast Missouri, and to avoid the upset, thank goodness Bashara hit that shot, and we didn't have to turn and go home.
Yeah, I caught your post-game interview on Channel 9 with Victor Howe, and you said something like, here's LSU's first NCAA tournament win in, I don't know, a decade or something. And I'm talking about how close it was, for the criticism or whatever, that it was a nail biter.
Well, it's better to win by one than to lose by whatever.
Yeah.
So I'll take it any way we could get it. We didn't play really well, but we got by. What do you do? Survive and move on? Is that what they say?
Survive and advance.
And that's
right.
what we did. We survived and advanced to the next game against Texas, I think it was.
Bashero, he was a challenge for you, huh? A little bit. I think you talked about, he wanted to wear the number 1, and you said, Brian, as cocky as you are, wearing number 1, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, we're not going to wear number 1. If you want to be number 1, prove it with your play, and don't have to advertise what you think you are by wearing it around. Let your playing do the talking for you. But all those guys on that team, when they were here this past weekend, they all have big personalities, and the thing that drove those guys, they all had a competitive nature. And Bashera challenged me from time to time. Lamont Rowland challenged me from time to time. We had a couple of fights in practice, I remember. Lamont Rowland and little Collis got into it one time and fought, and I tried to break it up, and I got hit in the back of the head. I mean, there was some but those guys came to play. And I don't mind confident, talented guys with strong personalities questioning sometime, and when you challenge them, they come back at you. As long as they went back on the floor and played and competed, I could deal with that. And the environment I created at practice sometimes lended itself to them guys getting a little, uptight, upset, or I'm gonna show you, coach, that sort of thing, which I always kind of liked.
Well, back in the day, we could go to practice for a while until somebody screwed it up and put something on TV he probably shouldn't have. There was the week that down the road here, you were playing the week you upset Arizona, 2002-ish, when Dick Vitale put the Santa Claus hat on you.
Yeah, that was 2002. They were number 1 in the country.
Number 1
at
in the
that
country.
Point. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It was around Christmas time. And I think we were going to practice, and Jaime Ureta was in one of his moods or whatever.
Oh, really?
And I think you threw him out of practice. And it's down in the dungeon.
Yeah.
And we're shooting it, and Jaime couldn't speak English that well. He told you something, and he walked out. And so we get back to the station, and I think George Sells, our news anchor at the time, had kind of gotten wind of what had happened, and just thought that was a gold mine. That's great. That's a lead story. And I'm like, okay. So it hit the air. The next day, John Brady is pacing with a bag of Zapp's potato chips, chewing me out. My practices are closed for the rest of the time I'm here. You will never get that privilege again.
With chips coming out my mouth and hitting you in the face.
Projectile zaps.
Projectile.
But you won the game, thankfully.
And Jaime played well that day too.
Jaime did. He was.
People thought I was this tough, mean guy, but I did still play Jaime, even though I threw him out of practice. He said he came back and said, "Coach, I'm gonna play." I said, "All right, well, show me then. If you think you're that good, come on, go play.
Yeah,
show me what you can do." And he played really well that day, and we were able to beat them. And they were number 1 in the country, and another Lute Olson beat him twice. Then wow,
yeah,
just thought about that.
You went over there one time too when you didn't have a whole lot of talent.
Played him well
and took him to the wire. I mean, almost beat him
well. I was Maurice Carter was on. That's one of my first teams, Maurice Carter. But
yeah,
but if you take care of the ball and we didn't shoot it, unnecessarily, and we weren't going to shoot 33 pointers. That's when the 3-point line, you used it to your advantage and not to just go shoot for 3-point sake or analytics. I didn't play that. I didn't know what that was. I wasn't smart enough to figure all that stuff out. So we just played on what I felt was right for the team and then tried to get that into the game.
Yeah. And then the win over Texas in 2000 to go to the Sweet 16. That's known for the Strohmile block at the end, right?
Yeah. In Sports Illustrated, you open up Sports Illustrated, and Strohmile's about 2 or 3 feet up by the square, and Mims is 7 foot, and he turned to shoot it, and Strohmile just pinned him on the glass. It wasn't goaltending, but sometimes they call it like that, and I'm glad they didn't call it. And that turned the game. And Torres Bright hit a big shot as a freshman on the left wing against their zone, and those 2 plays really changed the outlook of that game, and we were able to win it.
And the PMAC, too, that year. It was a special,
I think
special place.
I think we sold out 11 straight games that year.
Yeah.
And people standing in line to get in. That team, starting 4-4, it caught on. It was a little late for it to get going, but when we won those 10 in a row, it really caught on. And then, Casey McKenzie and the front row lunatics, man, I invited all of them to the dedication or the reunion Friday night, and they had a great time. And I always considered them part of the team because they traveled everywhere with us, and they'd meet us on the road, and we'd get them tickets and that sort of thing. So it was a good time for LSU basketball because we hadn't done anything in a long time, and that was a good year for us to get it back to where it needed to be.
Well, Chris Blades, who works here, who looked like he maybe could have played at LSU. He's about 6'5" or so. Yeah. Casey, I remember the basketball with the torn out eyes and stuff on the front row, and that's when the student section was on the sideline.
Yeah,
wasn't behind the goal.
Right.
It's funny. For years, I heard people say move the student section to behind the goal like Duke does it. So when they shoot free throws, they wave their hand. Then they moved it there, and I don't like it there. Move it back to the sideline where it was before.
Well, it's all about the money, and they could sell those seats.
Right.
Students weren't paying anything really to sit there, and they thought they could make some money, which that's what drives it, I guess, revenue and putting the students in the end zone. They tried to sell it to them like that, like what you just said, and then they sold seats to boosters and donors and supporters, and that's a business. It's a business too. Yeah.
Well, and you learned, okay. I've heard you talk about. I grew up in Lafayette, right? So I heard you talk about what Blackham Coliseum used to be like over there. How it was amazing, and
oh man,
I don't think I ever went to a game, and if I did, I don't remember it. If I could get in a time portal, I'd love to see Pistol Pete play at the old Cal Palace, and I'd love to go see a game at Blackham Coliseum. But growing up in Lafayette, it was a basketball town, like 8,000 at Blackham on a pretty regular basis and stuff. Baton Rouge, you're fighting something, right? I mean, I think you got to have a winning team, and you got to have a star player. And that's what you had your third year. Your first couple of years, the end of Dale Brown, it wasn't Def Dome. You get that player, you get the team, people will come. But it's not like football where some people are going to show up no matter what.
Yeah. And I guess since that time, they probably had here and there, when Trent took over, they didn't add one player to the team I had returning, and he won the league.
Yeah.
And so that year they had good crowds. Then there was a drought there for a minute, and then Will Wade got it back for about 3 years as good as it's ever been, in my opinion, because I was sitting there calling the games, and Will had the student body behind him, and I've never seen a successful basketball program that doesn't have the student body behind it, and Will had the student body behind him, and had some good players. He got 5 or 6 guys in the league now that are actually playing. They're contributing to their teams. A couple of them are starting. So Will had good players, good teams, and good coaching, and Will scheduled right. I mean, Will knew what to do with the schedule. So he got it going again, and since Will left, it's been struggle. The whole team left. Matt inherited a tough spot. Now NIL is so big and transfer portal is involved, so it's a whole different avenue in terms of trying to put a program together. We built the program here. We could do it through the recruiting process, even though we were on probation. Now, I don't know if you build a program, you just try to maintain it because players are leaving, coming and going. Even if you have a good team, your best player or two could leave on a really good team because they get more money somewhere else. And it makes it more difficult for a coach to build a team or put together a quality team. That's why if you go into that portal, you better evaluate properly, because if you are paying players and they're not performing like you thought they were going to perform, it's hard to get out of that vicious circle, because those players will leave as well, and you're back to where you were, and you almost start all over again, depending on the portal, to transform your team in 1 year. Missouri was able to do it this year from 0-18 to where they are now. They're one of the surprise teams in the league, if not the surprise team. So that portal is there, but you've got to be really smart about how you approach it and how you evaluate the players that you bring in.
Well, and it hurts the fan experience. I mean, you talk, Ricky Blanton was sitting here the other day. Here's a guy that played all these years, and when his senior day was real special because the fans are, when you had, Ronald Dupree or Torres Bright or, these guys had played 4 years, Tasman.
Yeah.
when their senior day rolls around, it's a standing ovation.
Yeah.
But then when a guy's been here and I've only watched him play for 3 months, where's the emotional attachment to that? And that's why the women's game, I think, is Flage and Michaela Williams. They're going to play 4 years at LSU. People know who they are and everything. It's a different thing.
Well, they can make almost as much money here as they can go into the WNBA. I mean, that's one thing keeps them here as well, and and the winning keeps them here. But like that reunion we had in 2000 of the 2000 team the other night, this past weekend, which Matt McMahon and his staff and Emily Dixon at the L Club Room, they did a tremendous job with it, just over the top in making all those guys feel warm, welcome, had their families here. That camaraderie that they built and the friendships that they created with each other by being here 2 and 3 and 4 years, I think some of that is going to be lost, as you alluded to, with transfer portal and players leaving and going elsewhere. You don't build that type of relationships that we did with that 2000 team, and even with the Final Four team in 2006. Those guys are like a family. Daryl Mitchell was here 4 years, and I think college basketball and all of collegiate sports at the high major level have lost some of that by players being able to transfer or get paid, and I don't like it here, and going somewhere else.
Yeah. A few more things I want to talk to you about. Coach has got to get on a plane today. He's going to the Georgia game in Athens, part of the broadcast team. As Coach Brady told me several years ago, I don't take it home with me like I used to after the game, win or lose,
That's
right?
That's right. I could drink a glass of wine and, maybe go to Ruth's Chris or somewhere and have something to eat and don't worry about it.
That's right.
It used to keep me up. I'd stay up 3, 4 in the morning, and the paper would hit the front door, and I'd go read the paper, and I hadn't slept but a couple hours. And now that doesn't. I always say the pay's not as good, but certainly the stress and the emotional anxiety of coaching in there, and it's a nice way to live. A nice way to be.
Well, just you as a person. I mean, people have said the person you were when you got to LSU and the person you are now is like two different guys. Now obviously you're not coaching anymore. Yeah. You were full of a lot of P and V when you got to LSU. And then I guess it all just rounds into the Dale Brown conversation, which both of you have said, hey, we could have handled that better. I didn't handle that as well as I should have.
Right.
He didn't handle as well as he should have.
Yeah.
And now these days you guys sit in the stands and watch the games together sometimes.
Yeah, well, we have lunch, we have dinner, we do things together, and we wish we would have done it a little bit better. But, I was a little insecure coming in here getting this job from Sanford. We didn't ever go to NCAA tournament at Sanford. We had some really good teams.
Beat LSU one time.
Beat LSU here, Dale's last year. Yeah, that was right. And Joe Dean Jr. is one of my best friends, and he and I were very close. We were GAs together at Mississippi State, and that's how I got introduced to the Dean family. But I never apologize for the way my teams try to play. I don't back up on that at all. How we tried to play and how we played and how we competed and the toughness we displayed, for the most part, I won't apologize for that. But I do wish sometimes I'd have treated or had a better relationship with you guys, the media, and been a little more relaxed and maybe even confident behind the microphone when y'all asked me some pinpoint questions. And I think y'all used to huddle up and put questions together to try to get me upset so I'd do something really or say something really stupid. I think y'all did that on purpose. But I could have handled that a little bit different. But, you live and learn, and I learned some things along the way. And I'm much better talking to guys like you now and being a part of that side than I was when I was here. I handled some of that wrong, and people got the wrong impression of me a little bit by how I conducted myself behind the camera, behind the microphone, or things that I said. And once an opinion is formed, it's hard to transform it and change it. And I was labeled like that, but you live and learn. But I never will apologize for what our teams did in really a full 10-year stretch. 2 SEC championships, 4 NCAA tournaments, a couple of NITs along the way in 10 years. Had some really good players. Never was really embarrassed by anything they did. So, that run was good.
Yeah.
And it changed my life. And that's why when I left here, I wasn't upset about it. I had an opportunity to do something in my life that changed, my persona forever, to be the coach at LSU and take them to a Final Four. I mean, that you can't you can't take that away. You can criticize some things here and there, but you certainly can't take that away. And I will always be grateful to Joe Dean for hiring me here and letting me be the coach.
Well, there's been a lot of coaches here, and LSU's been in the Final Four 3 times since '81.
Yeah.
And you've got one of those 3.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen very often around here.
I think people are starting to realize how difficult that is. It's not an easy thing to do, and especially now. It's even more difficult with NIL and transfer portal, and so we'll see. We'll see how soon they get there again. But it's 20 years before LSU went back when Dale took them, and then I took them.
Yeah.
So that's a 20-year drought, and we'll see if it's less than that or more than that as time goes on.
Well, that Final Four team, and looking at it, what kind of paved the way was your schedule early, right? You go to West Virginia, who was in the top, I think they were 13 in the country. Yeah. Mitchell hit the shot.
Yeah, Daryl Mitchell hit one at the buzzer. They were retiring Jerry West's number. It was the largest crowd in the history of West Virginia for a non-conference game. Jerry West was sitting 10 rows behind our bench. And when they were introducing starting lineups, Glenn Davis was turning around trying to find Jerry West. I had to say, Glenn, come on, man. I said something. I said, the heck with Jerry West. Kind of used another word about Jerry West. I said, you gotta be here. We gotta win this game.
Mr. NBA logo, right? Jerry West.
Yeah. Yeah, but he was, and we were able to beat him. Daryl Mitchell hit one with about 2 seconds left to win the game, and Daryl hit about 4 that year, buzzer beaters.
And then you had a game at UConn, who was number 2 in the country, and
we had one in the air to beat them, and we got beat by 1. We kind of squandered a lead up there. We were up 12 at one time, but Daryl had a shot, only last second shot he missed all year long. He shot 5 of them, hit 4, and we were able to win 4 of the 5.
The assassin.
The silent assassin.
Silent assassin.
He was here this past weekend.
Was he?
Yeah, he was here. Yeah.
I've been meaning to get in touch. Well, I have gotten in touch with him. He lives in Houston now, I think, or something.
Uh-huh.
I remember after you beat Duke, I think there's a press conference the day after in Atlanta, and Daryl Mitchell goes, "Boy, when I first got to LSU, Coach Brady was one tough cookie." and he said, he goes, and he softened up a little bit, changed. That you said, "Hey, oh man, somebody hand me a hanky. I'm getting emotional up here." But what a team! Iona.
Great team.
Jacksonville, Florida has been good to LSU in the NCAA tournament. That they went to the Sweet 16 when Will couldn't coach them.
Right.
They beat Yale and Maryland.
Yeah.
Tremont Waters, a last-second shot.
Yeah, against Maryland. He drove in there and laid one in, I think it was.
Laid it in. A la Daryl Mitchell, Texas A&M, same court.
Oh, yeah.
Lot longer shot.
Yeah.
More of a prayer, not a prayer, but way out there, right? In a low-scoring game. Those 2 games. Iona was up at the half, I think.
Yeah. We weren't playing good, and I remember both those games. The A&M game, all I wanted to do was get the ball to our best player. That was Daryl Mitchell, and let him decide what he wanted to do with it. He made the right decision, hit one of the biggest shots in the history of LSU basketball, in my humble opinion. The game against Iona, I remember I looked at the stat sheet. Glenn Davis had 4 shots the first half. And they didn't have a real postman that was very good. And so I asked the team, I said, guys, you want to win this game or lose it? If you want to win the game, we throw it to Glenn. We get him 15, 16 shots second half. Let him shoot it. If we don't like it, then we can get the rebound. But let's throw it to Glenn, see what he wants to do. Glenn had like 18 the second half. We won the game by double figures. So
yeah,
we sometimes you got to get your team back on track on what they need to be thinking about to win the game, and that's the old coach's job.
Well, and health is such a huge factor too, because Tyrus was dealing with the ankle thing, right?
Right.
And just as he got healthy was the NCAA tournament, and these things kind of met at the perfect time. Saints Super Bowl that year. They had guys that were hurt. They got him healthy just in the nick of time for the postseason.
Yeah.
And I think in that game, he started blocking shots. There's Tyrus again.
Yeah. Well, he didn't play he turned his ankle at the end of the first half against Kentucky at home. I don't know if we had 2 or 3 games remaining, but he didn't play, and we were able to win them without him. We went to South Carolina and won, beat Ole Miss here, and there was maybe one other game when he didn't play. Then we held him out of the SEC tournament and maybe played him the last game there for a little bit, but not much. But he came alive in the NCAA tournament, and after we were able to get out of Jacksonville, escape Jacksonville, that weekend in Atlanta, Tyrus Thomas was just outstanding. I mean, he was unbelievable against Duke in Texas.
Yeah, real quick, the SEC tournament, Glenn went off on Vanderbilt, right? I think it was the first game. He couldn't miss. He had this huge game. I think that was the post-game press conference where he made the tapeworm comment. You know, I had a tapeworm in my belly, and told a story about when he played at U-High, his ex-girlfriend showed up with another guy, and he was just, I'm going to show her today. And he just made all these shots right in front of her and turned and looked at her the whole time. And I think that was the tapeworm, and because Glenn on that Final Four run, he became a national star, personality.
Oh, no question, no question.
He had the Shaq kind of personality that not only was this guy a basketball player, he was funny and humorous, and people gravitated to that at those press conferences.
Yeah, I remember in Atlanta airport, we walked through the airport, and there were people hollering "Big Baby," 200 yards away. They'd see him and they'd holler at him and wave at him, and yeah, he was a kind of a bigger than life sort of guy. Not quite like Shaq in that he wasn't that big,
right?
But for that particular time on that particular team, he brought a lot of attention to us in LSU.
Yeah, he was hilarious, and certainly had a tough upbringing, things he dealt with.
Oh yeah, he had a tough issue coming up, and I tell you, that's why he needed to stay home in Baton Rouge. If he'd have gone off somewhere, maybe it wouldn't have worked for him. But he was able to play here in Baton Rouge with some of his best friends, Daryl Mitchell and certainly Garrett Temple, Darnell Lazar. All of those guys supported him and kept him on the straight and narrow a little bit when he was playing here.
Well, at U-High, he was pushing 380. He couldn't get up and down the floor. You guys, the weight thing was.
I got him down to a cool 310 at one time. I think. Yeah.
And some people said, Coach Brady's favorite topic at the time, football. But some people said this guy could have been an NFL tight end. He had big, soft hands. He was agile for his size. And
is it the left tackle on a right-handed passer that's really got to protect the backside because he has to have quick feet, and I think that's what Coach Saban described him as. He could be a perfect, that left tackle over there that could support the backside because he's big and he had great feet to be 310 pounds.
Final Four. Let's finish. So Duke, you're playing Duke in the Georgia Dome. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is it's not a national championship, but when you think of big time college basketball and atmospheres, and this is about as big as it can be. You're in the Georgia Dome. There's like 30,000 people there, and about 28,000 wearing blue and white. Duke fans were,
Come on now, we had more.
Yeah, you're right. My bad.
Come on, give us a break.
They had some there. I'm trying to build up, get David and Goliath here.
I got you. I agree with that. That was a David and Goliath. Then you had Krzyzewski and some guy named Brady. I mean, that right there will just sum it up for you.
Well, our friend Glenn Guilbeau in the media, he'd written something about Coach K had a national deal with American Express. And John Brady had a deal with Southern Belle Sandwiches or something like that, right? With that guy, Ricky
Bearden, my buddy. That's about right. I did have a little deal with him, man. I got free sandwiches.
But John Brady, 1-0 against Coach K.
I say that a lot of times, too. I kid my buddies, that I'm my friends with in coaching. How'd you do against Krzyzewski? But, that game, that's another thing I'm grateful for, is we were able to be in that position to play a guy like Krzyzewski, the number one team in the country, again, the number one overall seed, the college player of the year in J.J. Redick, and the LSU team, we were able to beat them. I mean, that's crystal in a lot of LSU fans. Whenever I go around and somebody, they see me and we talk, the people remember that game crystal. It's one of those moments in LSU basketball history that I think rivals some of maybe what Dale Brown did from time to time, and to beat the number one team in the country and a guy like Krzyzewski and Duke and in an NCAA tournament environment like that. that's something I'll never forget, and a lot of LSU fans haven't forgotten it either.
Well, it took everyone because Big Baby got in foul trouble, right?
Right.
And Darnell Lazar from Woodlawn High School
It was awesome.
plays the game of his life. He scored 10 points off the bench, I think, in the first half.
Yeah, take 10 points off the bench, and he was great. Darnell was here this past weekend. He came. He's assistant coach for the Pelicans down there on their staff, and he came up, and Darnell was perfect for what he did, and I will always be grateful for him for accepting his role as a senior coming off the bench on that Final 14.
Well, yeah, it's obviously the biggest win in your career at LSU. It's the game that everyone would reference as your biggest win. It's a little bit like the U.S. hockey team in '80. They beat the Russians, then they had to beat Finland to win the gold, and so I don't want to say the Texas game is an afterthought because it was an amazing game that went to overtime.
Right.
Dick Enberg, right? Big Baby for 3?
Yeah, questioning my choice of shot for one of my best players. But I never will forget Dick Enberg saying that, and Glenn nailed it in overtime. I think that put us up 7, and from that point on, I thought we were going to win the game. Tasman made the first basket, and then I don't know how it got to about 4, but yeah, Glenn hit a big three-pointer at a crucial time in overtime to put us up 7, and from then on we just kind of held the lead, made some free throws.
I remember in Atlanta, the celebration after the game that Big Baby had like a boa, all the Mardi Gras beads and colors and stuff, and y'all had a second line on the stage.
Yes, never seen nothing like it over there like that.
As always, LSU brought the party.
And the thing about that, Jock, it was coming off the heels of Katrina in August.
Yeah.
When Louisiana, particularly New Orleans, needed something to rally behind, and certainly that basketball team gave that area in the state something to rally behind after the devastation of Katrina in August.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's important to remember the calendar. Before the Saints of that fall reopened the Dome, blocked the punt against Atlanta, went to the NFC Championship game, Drew Brees, Reggie Bush, all that. You were really the first kind of ray of light after that awful.
It was something, we were misplaced in practice and all that sort of thing. But I told the team before the season started, I said, we talked about Katrina, how devastating it was, and all of our players, most of them had, because they're all from Louisiana, most of them, and had some kind of a relative or somebody they knew that had an issue with the hurricane. But when the season started, I told the team, the guy in Breaux Bridge that's going to buy tickets and come here, we can't use Katrina as an excuse not to be the best we can possibly be. We've got to absorb this, put it behind us, remember it, but put it behind us and be the best basketball team we can possibly be. Because you could use Katrina as a reason not to win, but I wasn't going to allow that team to do that. Well,
and I often said that Final Four team was almost like a AAU team from Louisiana. Glenn Davis, Tasman Mitchell, David Fleshman, Tyrus Thomas, Garrett Temple, Daryl Mitchell, Darnell Lazar. These guys were all from within a 60-mile radius of Baton Rouge.
Amazing. And I don't know if it'll ever happen again. That's why it was a special group, a special team, because of where they were from and how much they cared about one another and how they've known each other for years. And they played well. And their play demonstrated the closeness of that team.
Yeah, you only played like 7 guys a game, right?
I played 8.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of who came off the bench.
Chris Johnson, Magnum Roll, and Farrar every now and then.
Yeah, Farrar every now and
Voog.
then. Yeah, and Voog played the backup point about maybe 3 or 4 minutes a game to give Garrett a rest.
Right. Well, and a lot of these players were, like you said, a key part of Trent Johnson's first team at LSU that went to the NCAA tournament, gave North Carolina all they wanted in the second round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Tasman, my last year, Tasman didn't even play the whole year.
Hurt.
Chris Johnson broke his wrist and missed 14 games. So, some of those guys my last year could have made us a little bit better. And then Marcus Staunton was a junior coming out of junior college, and the year after I left, he was the most valuable player in the Southeastern Conference.
Yes.
And he was already here. So, that team that I left won the league, and they did give me a SEC championship ring after that season because Trent Johnson, told me when he gave it to me, those were all your players. I didn't have anything to do with them coming here, so you deserve this, and that was nice of him to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember I was at that game when they played North Carolina, who won the national title, and it was a 68-68 game with about 8 minutes left. Ty Lawson, they must have pumped him up with a horse tranquilizer at halftime or something because he had a bad ankle. Second half, he's cutting, weaving, and kind of took over the game. Yeah, in that game. But Thornton made some shots where North Carolina fans, who I think are pretty knowledgeable about basketball, were ooh and ah, like, holy cow, this guy can shoot.
Yeah, he played 11 years in the league, and he's back in Baton Rouge coaching here in town at a little private school, and I had lunch with him last week, and he's a real good guy, man, and I was happy with the career he had, happy for him.
Yeah, I think he's going to do some stuff with us. He wants to do some broadcasting stuff and everything, and he's always been the Breck Park down the street where he would shoot. He said he took us there, and he'd shoot there till midnight, 1 in the morning. Shoot.
Yeah, quality guy, man. You get involved with him, he'd be good. He's good.
And some levity to finish out. Will Wade, when we interviewed him a year ago, he said, "People told me when you go to LSU, it never ends well." And LSU's a place where if you're Coach O, you can have the greatest team of all time, and a year and a half later you're out. And a year and a half later I have to go in the Final Four.
I remember that interview you went over and talked to him. That was a good interview. Yeah, Will had no issues with it, though. He wasn't like he was mad at anybody. Same way when I left here. I wasn't mad at anybody. I wasn't upset about it. You take a job like this at any level, this high level where we are, whether it's LSU or anywhere else at the level the SEC plays or Big 10, Big 12, things happen sometimes that you may not agree with, but they do happen. And it happened to me, but like I said before, Joe Dean hiring me here as a coach changed my life, and I'll always be grateful for that, and I'll always be grateful for the part that LSU, being the LSU basketball coach, played in my life. So, I had my opportunity. I did what I did. It's in the record books. You talk about it. Other people can say whatever they want.
Well,
but it's fine. I'm glad I'm back doing the radio with Chris Blair. It's been a hoot.
Oh,
it's really great.
Well, even Steve Spurrier, after 10 years, they get tired of looking at you, he says, right? He's like, well, Coach, we're kind of tired of going 10-2. We kind of want to take that next step,
I understand. I understand.
It's that's the way it is. But
also I'm glad, like people like you in the media and some other people in town and other people that had opinions of me, it's been good for me to come back and them see me in a different light. You said I'm a different guy, and I am to a degree. I'm a little more relaxed now, but age has something to do with that. But I'm glad I've been able to come back and really change my legacy a little bit. They never said I couldn't coach. They got upset with me sometimes for my personality, I guess. But I'm glad I've been able to come back and people see me in a different light, and it's been really refreshing. And I appreciate people saying that and being able to see me in a different way.
Well, absolutely. I'm not saying that just because you're sitting here, but people listen to radio broadcasts. John Brady knows basketball. Obviously, break down the game. Chris Blair does an amazing job. No one's more well prepared than him before a game.
You got that right.
And you're kind of like a boxer, right? You got to step in, hit your couple jabs in that 4 or 5 second window, right? And then step out and let him take over the play-by-play.
Well, when Chris talks and he starts to drink water, I know I got about 10 seconds. And I can get in and get out.
And Kent Lowe, the great Kent Lowe, no one could be the – I can't imagine who's going to be the SID after Kent Lowe, because he's going to be an irreplaceable personality there.
No question. He's a fixture at LSU and a fixture around the Southeastern Conference and really all over the country, because everywhere we go, everybody wants to see Kent Lowe, and he knows everybody, and he's well respected. And being well respected and well liked is a difficult thing to achieve, and he's done it.
Let's finish with the current. So it kind of felt like rock bottom against Texas the other day. It was a game that LSU was a 1.5 underdog. They're at home. It's a 6-point game at halftime. The thing just spirals out of control. They lose by over 30 points. Sparse crowd, just apathy. I think everyone likes Matt McMahon. I think everyone's rooting for him. I think everyone thinks he's a good guy. I think on one hand, it's like, okay, are there some things he could do better? Yes. And on the other hand, is he just a victim of the machine right now of LSU is not investing the resources in the men's basketball that other teams are?
I think that's a combination of both. The investment LSU makes in terms of NIL dollars, but I certainly don't want to use that as an excuse not to play better or win games. That's a fallback. You have to take what you have and make the best of it. And I do think we probably need a little better talent level to be able to play in the top 6. That was my assessment of the team when I watched them earlier. I was trying to figure out who is an all-league player on our team. We don't have a Johnson, the guard at Texas. We don't have a Pettiford, the really good freshman guard at Auburn. Now, the reasons for that, somebody else needs to answer that. NIL money, did we not evaluate well? Whatever that case may be. But certainly you can't go into this league and finish in the top 6 if you don't have a pro or if you don't have a couple of first or second team all-league players. And I'm not sure if we've reached that point yet. Now, could we play better, as you alluded to? Yes, and I think Coach McMahon and the coaching staff would admit that, particularly Saturday. Yes, we could have played a lot better. Yeah. But you've got to keep giving this team some kind of possibility. Here's what I compared it to the other day. Arkansas, who started 1-6, and everybody said Calipari can't coach. It's passed him by. His team's in disarray. They look like they're not having fun, whatever it was. He stayed with them and kept coaching them and teaching them, and whatever he did in the practice showed up in the Kentucky game the other day, and they beat Kentucky, and they looked like the better team. Yeah. So can LSU do something like that? Stay together, keep working hard, keep encouraging, keep challenging, and then maybe go to Georgia and get a big road win, and everybody kind of calm down a little bit.
Well, and another thing, when I walk into the PMAC, I don't feel like I'm walking into a dump. I feel like that they have done a pretty good job with the facility. Is it outdated? Do they need a new one? Yeah, they've talked about doing that and all that. But that got really played up in the past a little bit in terms of recruiting and players, and I still think I don't go around the league like you do, but I still walking in that place. The lights are nice. The seats have been redone. They've got a nice video board. Everyone's kind of close to the action. I still don't feel like it's a bad venue to watch a game.
Well, and if you get the right number of people in there, it's still as loud as it was in 2000 and 2006. So, yeah. and in the 80s when Dale had his great 10-year run too. So those things never change. Nate Oates, I went to a function with a couple of my Alabama buddies that Nate Oates spoke at before we played them over there in Tuscaloosa. His AD was talking about a new arena. Nate Oates gets up and says he's not a fan of a new arena. They're building him a new practice facility with his offices and that sort of thing. He said, but the money that we have here at Alabama, I would rather it go to the NIL fund than go to a new arena, because the Coleman Coliseum is old. But let me tell you, that other day we were in there, they roll them in there, and it is an intimidating place to play. So, and I think players now aren't influenced as much by a new arena as they are about NIL dollars. Yeah. They may play in that street with a goal if the money's right. So, and that's shallow to say to me. But that's the nature of where we are in college sports today.
Alabama's always supported that basketball. They put 15,000 in that place on a pretty regular basis. And there is something to be said about the quaintness and the charm of an old college arena going into a,
Duke does pretty good with 5,500 seats.
You're right.
They do pretty good.
Right. There's something to be said about going into a place that's too pristine, too clean, too, shiny. And brand new.
Well, Jock, what I think the NIL dollars has slowed down, in my opinion, the arms race. The biggest arena, nicest arena, the biggest, nicest locker room. Everybody's got something like that. Right. But I think now it breaks down to NIL dollars and that sort of thing. So I think the arms race is going to slow down, and I think until they change the NIL dollars and put a limitation, or I'd like to make it public. I'd like to know what every school is paying their players in NIL dollars, specifically individually, so everybody can really know. Now you think you know, but you might not know. Right. So I wish it'd be just open book, public, for everybody to see what this guy's making, what that guy's making. so the fans would really know how the money's distributed.
It's a whole different world from when you coached.
Oh,
what was your first salary at LSU?
Let me see. Right at 400, 395 or something.
395.
Yeah, something like that. 385, something like that.
Gotcha.
I thought I hit the lottery. I think I was at Sanford. I made 105.
Yeah.
And I almost tripled my salary, over 4 times my salary. And I said, holy smokes.
Right, maybe
I
give
like
you a
this
car
coaching
and some
gig.
other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then Joe Dean, too, rest his soul, but he didn't quite have the checkbook that Scott Woodward's got these days to pay
Sometimes
coach.
I used to accuse Joe Dean. I said, he thinks that's his own money. he would balance the books now. He was into that. So, but that was a sign of the time. That's the way it was.
Yeah.
And Joe Dean was a wonderful AD to me. He was a good friend of mine. His family and I are close. Joe Dean Jr. and I are best friends, and I can't do anything but say nice things and appreciation for what he did to change my life.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a story that even after LSU won the national championship with Saban, he said, "I still think I could have got Saban for $750."
That sounds just like him.
But God rest his soul. And it's a Dixie basketball camp that his
still going.
kids...
They call it string music basketball camp now.
Okay.
And I still go up there. I talked to Scott Dean, his grandson, Joe Dean Jr.'s son, and I go up. I've been going up there for the last 7 summers and just working, and still teach a station sometimes, and it's been really good. It's kind of like working with Brock Cantrell over at Baton Rouge Community College. I go over to Baton Rouge Community College when I'm not with LSU doing the radio. I was over there yesterday at practice and was coaching a little bit, and I enjoy that. So that kind of stuff keeps me busy, keeps me in touch with young people, and I'm not going to sit at home and not do nothing. I like getting out and doing things, and I appreciate Brock letting me do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming down. You were also on the stage with Katy Perry years back. Your daughters are superstars, right?
I think so. Their daddy thinks so. I don't know what anybody else thinks. But that was an experience. Katy Perry calling me up on stage when my youngest daughter traveled all over the world with her for 1.5 years as a dancer.
Yeah.
And Katy called me up on stage. It was kind of, I was jumping up and down like I wanted to be picked, but it was already programmed to pick me. And I went up there and she interviewed me, and I put a punch in for LSU in the Final Four in 2006, and everybody kind of cheered. And
yeah.
Then I asked Katy Perry, this was cool. I said, Katy, you know my daughter. And she played dumb. She says, your daughter? Who's your daughter? I said, Brooke Brady. She's standing right there. She said, oh, we love Brooke. So that was pretty cool, man.
Yeah. You got your place down in Destin. And
yeah, then I'm in Fort Myers. So it's good.
Yeah. All right.
Life's good.
Awesome. Thanks for coming down, Coach.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
John Brady, LSU basketball coach, and now catch him on the radio with Chris Blair. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you later.